This is Business Live from BBC News with Marianne Mashiri and Sally Bundle.
D-Day for Google in Europe. The US tech giant could be in for a record fine over allegations its Android operating system gives it an unfair commercial advantage.
Yes, live from London. That's our top story on Wednesday, the 18th of July. The EU says Google is using its dominant position to keep people in the Googleverse, while the tech giant maintains alternatives are just a click away. Also in the programme, Theresa May will face another day of grilling over Brexit as deep divisions continue in the party over the future trade relationship. And the markets are open and it's looking like a good start to the day for European stocks.
Also in the programme, we get the inside track on the big business of skincare. It's a market that seems to know no end. But when people talk about natural ingredients helping you to do things like sleep, are you really convinced? We'll look at that in detail. Also, as a map of broadband connectivity in the UK is revealed, we want to know, how well does your internet work where you live? Are there areas where you still cannot get connected, and how frustrating is that for you? Just use the hashtag BBC BizLive.
Hello and a very warm welcome to this edition of Business Live. The tech giant Google could be handed down a record fine later today by the European Union's watchdog. The EU has spent 3 years investigating whether the company has gained an unfair commercial advantage. Here's the reason why. Google provides the operating system for all Android phones free of charge, with the condition that Google Chrome and its search engine are included as the default options. Now, there are over 2 billion people using it every month. That's more than double the number of iPhone users. And all of those people will be downloading other apps and can be targeted for advertising, which, of course, as we know, is a crucial revenue stream for Google. Well, the EU says that this keeps users within the Google universe to the detriment of other providers, while Google maintains that alternatives are just a swipe away. Well, last year, Google paid a then record fine of $2.7 billion because the EU Commission found that it unfairly promoted its own online shopping tools and sites.
Thanks, Marianne. Well, we have our tech correspondent, Rory Kathleen-Jones, with us in the studio. So, Marianne, talking through some of the issues, but in a bit more detail, what is the European Commission's point?
This is all about the control Google exercises over this Android operating system, and in the European Commission's view, how far it's come from the original concept. Google originally touted Android as completely open source. You could take it, do what you want with it, it's free, we don't care. And over the years, it's got more and more tied down. They want to impose limits, partly to make it safer, they say, and more usable. But things like making you, if you're a manufacturer and want to use Google search on the phone, take a whole bunch of other Google apps too. And also incentivizing manufacturers to promote Google search above other search engines by giving them money, frankly, giving them a cut of the profits. So that's the central allegation, is that it's incredibly dominant. Android on phones around the world, on a huge number of phones, and it's abusing that dominance for its own good.
What is Google's argument to defend itself?
Well, what Google is saying is that this works, frankly. You've got two operating systems out there. You've got Apple's iPhone, very powerful, very locked down, very controlled, and you've got Android, which is less locked down, but they want it to be secure. They want it to be a friendly environment, and they're saying it works for customers. They're getting a huge range of phones, a huge range of apps, a great range of services at a good price. That's their argument.
Now, the European Competition Commission could dish out quite a hefty fine. However, it may well ask Google to change its ways as well. So in what ways might Google be forced to change its business model?
Well, it might stop it from doing those things that we've heard about, from bundling all these apps together and paying incentives to people to use them. And that would be a threat, because Google isn't in it for love, it's in it for money. It makes a huge amount of money be out of this business model as it works now. Anything which attacks that business model could affect its bottom line. So some pretty tough negotiations ahead.
Mary, I'm talking about a fine dished out last year of something like $2.7 billion. This one could potentially be over 11 billion, it's reported, because it's 10% of global turnover.
Well, when you think that last year's fine was about Google Shopping, which to many people's eyes is a pretty obscure business. Android is not an obscure business, it's a huge business. Google has moved its advertising business from the desktop to the mobile with a huge success, hugely lucrative. So yeah, we're expecting, if there is a fine, we're expecting it to be a pretty big one.
You're updating us, I assume?
I will be on the button, ready to rush into your studio.
Indeed, perfect. Thank you, Rory. So that could be an announcement we get in a few hours' time. We will update you.
Yes, absolutely. But for now, let's take a look at some of the day's other stories. And AstraZeneca will increase its stockpile of drugs by around 20% in preparation for a no-deal Brexit. The European regulator has told firms to be ready for a possible hard Brexit in April 2019. AstraZeneca says it has already spent more than $50 million preparing for a no-deal.
Video streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime now have more subscribers than traditional pay TV services here in the UK. The country's media regulator Ofcom says TV services will need to adapt to compete, saying it would be great to see a British Netflix.
Technology entrepreneur Elon Musk has apologised for calling British cave diver Vernon Unsworth a pedo on Twitter before deleting the posts. Mr. Unsworth was involved in the operation in Thailand to rescue 12 boys and their football coach. Mr. Musk had offered to assist the mission and said he was building a mini submarine, but Mr. Unsworth said it wouldn't have worked, prompting Musk's outburst.
Now, trade negotiators from the 11-member Trans-Pacific Partnership are meeting today in Japan to discuss whether to accept new members into the free trade bloc.
Yes, it comes just a day after possibly the biggest trade deal ever was signed by Japan and the EU.
Let's talk to Katie Silver about this. She is in Singapore for us today. Nice to see you, Katie. I mean, the ink has barely dried on the Japan-EU trade deal, and Japan today is on the march still.
They are. They're very coming forward when it comes to, they're pursuing free trade. But as you say, they're meeting in Hakone, which is west of Tokyo, beautiful national park area. And they're trying to work out a way to get forward, to get over the line when it comes to this TPP-11. So this was the new deal that came about as a result of the original Trans-Pacific Partnership, which was canned after President Trump took office last January. Now, it was signed in March, but so far only Mexico has ratified it back in April, and Japan has sort of completed the procedures so that they can ratify it in 10 days' time. But yes, they need 4 more to get over the line, which Japan hopes can happen by the end of this year. So they need some other signatories such as Australia, New Zealand, Singapore to sign on. So who are the prospective new members that they're interested in or would like to nut this out in terms of? So Colombia has requested to join it. The TPP has said, for example, TPP-11 has said that Korea is ready, but they haven't applied. And then when it comes to countries like Thailand and Indonesia, they've also expressed an interest, but so far they say that they're not yet ready to join.
Katie, thank you very much indeed. Let's take a look at the markets now. Japan's Nikkei moved to a more than 1-month high. Exporting stocks like car makers and tech firms got a boost after the dollar hit a 6-month high against the yen. In terms of European stocks, well, it's been a very good start to the day. Mainly we've had some tech big names like Ericsson coming out with some figures. Easyjet in London has come out with its figures. Its share price up around about 4% after it raised its profit guidance forecasts. Paul Blake, though, has the details on what is ahead on Wall Street later.
Kicking us off before the bell is Morgan Stanley. Wall Street is expecting the major investment bank to announce a rise in profits on the back of strong trading and disciplined expenses. Over their morning coffees, traders will also have an eye towards data on housing and building. And during the day, the street will have one eye on Washington, where Federal Reserve Chairman Jeremy Powell continues his Capitol Hill blitz, giving testimony before a House Financial Services panel. Meanwhile, America's central bank will release its Beige Book during the trading day. The binder of economic stories from around the country always comes out about 2 weeks before the Fed meets to decide interest rates and helps inform the opinion of Fed governors. After the bell, look for earnings from IBM, American Express, eBay, and a host of others.
Really busy time. That's Paul Blake, who's in New York for us. We've got Mike Amy with us, Managing Director and Portfolio Manager at PIMCO. Nice to see you,
Hello.
Mike.
Hi, Mike.
It's actually a really, really busy time, as Paul was outlining, a lot coming from the US Federal Reserve as well, which is quite interesting. But can I get your thoughts on Brexit to start with, if you don't mind? The government, Theresa May, getting a vote through by the skin of her teeth late last night. It was on trade this time.
Indeed.
It's been quite a week.
It has been quite. It's been quite a couple of weeks, actually. To be fair, I mean, you've had quite a lot of turnover in the cabinet. I think from a market's perspective, what the markets really look for is the separation between Westminster politics and a fundamental shift in where the UK is going to end up in its relationship with the European Union. So actually, the market volatility over the last week or two has been quite low.
I was just going to say something as well you were saying is how, the market volatility is low on this story, but partly because we're all getting really desensitised, or at least those in financial markets are.
I think yes. I mean, the markets are a little bit desensitised to the daily politics, and that doesn't change the fact that it will have a major impact if we do, for example, go for if we went WTO or anything like that. But at the moment, the markets are. I'll keep an eye on it, but I'm not going to change my fundamental view that at the end of the day, I think there's a base expectation that some kind of deal will be struck.
Plenty of corporate news out, but also we have some inflation figures out in the UK later. What are you expecting and why? So
inflation has been coming down in the last few months, which has generally been good news for us all. We may see a little bit of a tick up this month. So inflation currently 2.4%. And the oil price, as we all know, petrol price has been going up. So sadly, that will get reflected in this month's data. But the broader picture, I think, is inflation seems to be on a downwards trajectory, notwithstanding a blip up this month. So hopefully some good news in the months ahead for us all.
OK, thank you for now. Mike will be back. Plenty of other stories for him to chew over later with us.
Yes, but still to come, love the skin you're in. One skincare company says it's all about natural ingredients and getting enough sleep, Sally.
Yes.
We'll find out more about that elusive recipe.
You're with Business Live from BBC News. First of all, though, let's talk about Easyjet, because Mariam was mentioning earlier their shares up some 4% this morning after the company said it saw its revenues in the latest quarter jump 14% to £1.6 billion as passenger numbers went up.
Yes, the company's also raised its full-year profit guidance with bright expectations for trading over the summer.
Let's talk to John Strickland, aviation specialist at JLS Consulting. Nice to see you, John. So give us your take on these figures. Clearly, shareholders, market watchers are quite happy with what they had to say this morning.
Yeah, a very strong set of results from Easyjet. They've raised their profit guidance for the year ahead quite considerably. But perhaps the main benefit they've had in recent months was the failure of Monarch. Monarch Airlines going bankrupt last year took a lot of capacity out of the market. That hasn't been replaced. That's allowed Easyjet to have a better pricing environment. They're not chasing passenger demand with too much capacity. We've also seen airlines who last year and the previous year moved capacity out of the Eastern Mediterranean from markets like Turkey into Spain, which again led to overcapacity, moving it back again. So both those factors have really reflected in the figures we've seen today.
John, Easyjet has said some interesting things, hasn't it, about the warmer weather that we've had in Europe and what impact that could have on business?
Yeah, they just made a little throwaway comment, you could say, on that this morning. It echoed what Norwegian Airlines said last week with their quarterly figures, that because of the unusually warm Northern European weather this year, many of the customers of airlines like Easyjet and Norwegian, of course, fly from Northern Europe to the south to get some summer sun. Add that to the recent World Cup, and some of these airlines are saying maybe we're going to get a little bit of a hit, a little bit of softness on some of our later and normally higher fare paying bookings. So that's one to watch in the months ahead.
OK, John, thank you very much indeed. John Strickland, who is an aviation analyst, talking about Easyjet's figures. Just to give you another story that's on the Business Live page, pound is under pressure today, the pound sterling. We were talking about Brexit just a moment ago. The Prime Minister, she's got quite a day ahead of her. She's got parliamentary question time in Westminster, but also she's going to be grilled by the 1922 committee, which is the Conservative backbenchers, who will have a lot to say to her.
And that's one of the reasons why we've seen the markets, especially in London, on the rise, is the pound has been under pressure. So that's definitely one to watch through the day as all the latest machinations in terms of politics come out of Westminster.
OK, so the pound down versus the dollar and the euro.
You're watching Business Live. Our top story, Google could face a record fine in Europe over its Android operating system, which the EU says gives the tech giant an unfair advantage.
Now, can sleep be an important part of your beauty regime?
Well, if it is, then I'm really ugly.
Guest certainly thinks so. She is the boss of a leading skincare company and thinks a good night's sleep can help you look good.
Yes, her company is called This Works and is part of a growing industry. The global skincare sector is estimated to be worth around $134.5 billion this year.
And it's expected to grow more and more than $141 billion over the next year.
The company began life as an aromatherapy specialist back in 2003, but it got into skincare in a major way in 2011.
And it was bought by US private equity firm 10 Gram Capital Partners in 2015 and now supplies countries all over the world. Well, we have Dr. Anna Persaud with us, who's the boss of This Works. Welcome to the programme. Thank you very much for coming in. Well, you can imagine that we were both quite intrigued and fascinated by your business and what you do, especially this whole area of sleep, because that's something you're moving into in a major way, because you feel sleep is key to how you look.
That's absolutely right. So, you know, there is this old adage that beauty sleep is the secret that we all need to know about. And actually that's very much the case, because it's at night when you're asleep that your skin repairs, when the skin detoxifies and when new skin cells are generated. And so if you don't sleep well, over time your skin will look unhealthier and you will age more quickly. So our assumption is therefore that if you sleep well, you will look better, you will feel better, and that's actually the first step in every skincare routine.
So what does that mean for people like us, Sally and I? Sally does shift work, we both have 3 kids, we both do shift work actually,
Yeah.
We don't get enough sleep. What does that mean for us?
Well, it means you have to find the best times in the day to sleep. So not everybody needs to sleep 8 hours at night. You can take small sleeps during the day to boost your total amount of sleep that you get over a 24-hour period. So getting to sleep is important. So we use lavender, vetiver, chamomile essential oils at therapeutic levels to help you to put you into a sleep more quickly.
And you're a scientist, aren't you, Anna? So your degree was in biochemistry, I believe?
Yeah,
or?
I have a PhD in biochemistry.
Okay, sorry, PhD.
No, it's fine.
Dr. Anna.
And so, yes, it's all about, for us, creating products that work and then giving people the evidence.
How do you know these work? I mean, this is a Sleep Plus pillow spray. So you spray that on your pillow and that's supposed to help you to get to sleep. What sort of research did you do to see that this does actually do the job?
So our process involves a panel of consumers from across the UK that we asked to evaluate the products during the development process. And we asked them, did you get to sleep more quickly? Did you have a longer sleep? And that's the first part of the process.
Did you pick, though, people who've struggled to sleep?
Exactly. So people who suffer from temporary sleep issues. We then went into independent user trials. So over the last 5 years, we've conducted 5 independent trials, over 900 people, in order to assess whether people actually can benefit from using our product. And the case was yes.
You've got one for babies as well, which I must admit I found, is this one? Oh no, you've got one over there. I found that fascinating because that's what every parent is desperate for, their child to sleep. So what does your product do when it comes to a baby that obviously wakes up when he or she wants milk or needs a nappy change or whatever?
Exactly. Well, you can't change that. That's normal, and babies need to wake up to be fed and comforted. But actually what the fragrance does, the sleep fragrance, is it helps to establish patterns of behaviour, because it actually triggers areas of the brain associated with memory. So this can help to build a sleep routine so children understand when they smell the fragrance, it's time to sleep.
From a business perspective, how difficult has it been to grow the business in the current climate? Because the wellness sector, I suppose you fall into that, don't you?
We do.
And this kind of cosmetic wellness, it's quite a saturated market. How do you, single yourselves out in that market, and how do you grow your business?
Well, we are pioneers in the area of sleep beauty, so the idea that sleep is a beauty treatment. So we were there, we've been doing this since 2011. So that's been our advantage in many ways, but you're right, it is a competitive market and consumers are looking for a point of difference. So for us, it's about supporting the claims that we make with robust science behind it. And I think this is what consumers want. They don't just want the promise, they want to see the evidence. It's also about creating experiences. People shop online And if they go into store, they're looking for an experience, they're looking for advice, they're looking for something that they can't get online.
But when it comes to getting your name out there versus some of the very strong, well-established historical brands, that isn't easy at all, is it? And I mean, you've worked for those brands in the past. You know that business extremely well.
Yeah. So I think the agility comes from having ambassadors and users, people that use the products. As you have discovered, people will talk about it. It's word of mouth, and then it's kind of
celebrity ambassadors for you. So would it be, I don't know, a famous person who says, "Wow, I can sleep now," and they put it all over their Twitter account, Instagram, social media?
It certainly helps if a high-profile person says this works. Obviously, that gives us immediate uplift in sales. But actually, what we see is that it's an organic process. We see people across the world talking about the products on their own social media channels, and actually this groundswell is how we are managing to compete with the big businesses.
Yeah, it's interesting how social media does help. Dr. Anna Persaud, it's so good to have you on the programme. Thank you for coming and talking to us today.
Thank you very much.
So you're going to spray that all over your body later, are you?
No amount of sleep spray is going to help me.
Try and help you sleep.
No, I think it's an interesting concept. I think it's true. Sleep and your looks and how you feel, they're both so connected. It's so important.
Talk to our makeup team at 4 a.m.
Well, quite, yes.
I call them the prosthetics team in my case.
They
but
literally
anyway,
throw the makeup at my face in the morning.
Right, let's move on. A little more than a week ago, Airbus issued a stark warning about the consequences of a bad Brexit deal.
Yes, and our very own Theo Leggett spoke with Airbus's Chief Operating Officer at the Farnborough Air Show and asked about what the company would like to see.
I think the Prime Minister is committed to doing that. I think from the discussions we've had with her, she understands the key issues from an Airbus point of view, which is frictionless movement of components and the ability to maintain the UK's role in EASA. So I think there are continuing political battles. I'm not a political expert, I'm an engineer, not a politician. But I have to say from an Airbus point of view, we're very encouraged and we hope that it continues to move in that direction. And clearly we also have to make sure that we send the same message into the European Commission so that they understand the importance of finding a practical solution.
Looking globally, trade tensions are clearly escalating. There is the prospect of a full-blown trade war. How worrying is that for you?
I think I would agree with the comments made by Dennis Muhlenberg of Boeing yesterday. I think a trade war is in no one's interest. It's a zero-sum game which will badly affect everyone. So our encouragement would be that we have as frictionless, again, a trading relationship as possible.
That's Tom Williams there, the Chief Operating Officer of Airbus. So as promised, Mike is back and we've got various stories to talk through. And this one really caught our attention, talking about Britain's new digital divide. We're talking about broadband speeds. Now, you would assume a big city is the place to be, but apparently not. Apparently not, no. And you'd naturally expect it to be a big city versus a rural area divide. This study from the FT suggests actually it's inner city versus suburban areas is the bigger problem, and which is not naturally what you'd expect to see out of that kind of thing.
We have asked lots of people to tweet us about this because it's just incredible, isn't it? You'll think that actually in the city. And I was reading an article the other day that said that apparently Madagascar has better broadband coverage than the UK and France and many other European countries. Why is that?
I think it's because they've got they've recently laid the fibre cables. So I think it's just newer product than the UK. But ironically enough, of course, there's plenty of growth potential in Madagascar. I think it's just over 2% of the population have access to internet.
We have lots of tweets. We've had a tweet from Shani, who I think lives in Pakistan. It says, in some cases in Pakistan, cities are overloaded with users and villages have normal or less users. So I think what he's saying is that actually the reason why cities are seeing better broadband is because there are fewer people using them. Sorry, rural areas have fewer people using broadband there.
I think that's a good point, and that seems to come out in the study as well. And actually part of the reason for some of the rural areas being better is because they've created self-help groups to lay the cables either themselves or to get companies to do it for the local area. So you've got high quality cables and less usage gives you obviously great access.
Mike, we have someone called Jan. I'm out in the hills just east of Swansea and it'd be quicker to use Royal Mail than the internet.
A pigeon. A pigeon. What about Carl? What does he say? Carl Reader, absolutely a surprise to me. to find that rural areas have better service. Lucky to get anything above a snail's pace at home at my office.
I think
where
it
is he?
depends
Does he
where,
say where he is? He doesn't say where he is.
He just says he's rural, basically. But I think, you know, ultimately, broadband is so important. Broadband companies need to up their game, right?
I think they do,
everybody.
for the country as a whole. I think
And for
it's a major
businesses.
issue. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And especially with more people who are working from home.
That's right,
Many
yeah.
people choose to work from home at least one day or maybe a couple more than that.
Absolutely
And
right.
it's absolutely critical.
It's critical to a lot of those businesses, yes. I think it's, you know, well, obviously it's getting a lot of focus now. The more focus it gets, obviously, the better, and hopefully we can all get better access whether we live in the rural area, in a city, or in the suburbs. But
Mike, thanks for being with us today on
Lovely to
Business
see you,
Live.
Mike. Thank you so much.
Another very busy day.
It's been fun. It's been great.
I'm
We
going
talked about
home for my
beauty,
power
about
nap.
broadband, the 2 Bs, and the 3rd B, Bundock. Thanks so much for watching. Take care.
Have a really good day. Bye-bye.